Did you know it's possible for autistics to experience hallucinations, delusions, and paranoia without actually receiving diagnosis of schizophrenia? What happens is, during development, neurotypicals generally go through something called synaptic pruning, where the synapses, the neurotransmitters in the brain, prune. They die off because they're not used, they're not needed anymore, whatever the case may be. For a neurodivergent individual, that synaptic pruning is very minimal. We still retain a lot of the synapses that we had in childhood, which is why our brains operate so differently. For autistics, we have more neurotransmitters all the way around. So during times of great stress, maybe when we're overstimulated, whatever the case may be, individuals with more neurotransmitters in those regions of the brain that are in control of the visual cortex, your hearing, stuff like that, they can overfire. This may not be as prevalent when the autistic individual is calm and understimulated, but more specifically when they're overstimulated. For an autistic person who doesn't really have a chemical imbalance, but they just have more synapses, something like caffeine may actually help overload those neural pathways to calm the hallucinations. Now, the reason I say that they don't qualify for a diagnosis of schizophrenia is often because these hallucinations don't occur all the time. They don't even occur across for the minimum time span that requires a schizophrenia diagnosis. But during times of intense stress, during overwhelm, overstimulation, when they're processing a lot of information, that's when these hallucinations can be experienced. And caffeine may or may not work the same way as it does with somebody who's hyperactive and is neurodivergent. There's still little research on that, but it is a possibility. In a research paper from 2022 from Rebolsi et al. Called Recognizing Psychosis in Autism Spectrum Disorder, found that about 34.8% of patients diagnosed with ASD can show psychotic symptoms. Psychotic features means something like not really within reality. Somebody who is experiencing hallucinations, stuff like that. And while the paper goes on to talk about autism spectrum disorder and schizophrenia, it doesn't neglect the idea that these psychosis-like experiences can actually show up in somebody who is simply diagnosed as autistic and not part of the schizophrenia spectrum. And while hallucinations, delusions, and paranoia are not a core feature of the autism spectrum, it is not uncommon for many autistics to experience them.